Not gonna lie, this might be a question that I would skip if I saw it in the hard module. Look at those answer choices. They're so long. That worries me that it's just gonna be a time suck, if nothing else. So it might be easy, but easy questions can still take a lot of time. So think about that as you're going through the hard module, especially if you're worried about pacing. You don't need to do the passages in order. Find ones that just suit your skills. All right, we still want the main idea though, so let's just look at this passage and see what kind of stands out. Philosophers note that many people have an intuitive sense that while we ought not to lie, there may be circumstances in which lying is permissible. Okay. If this intuition is correct and we lack an inviolable duty to speak truthfully, what grounds opposition to lying in the first place? Okay. This person has advanced one answer by appealing to a duty to respect others' agential interests. The possession of false beliefs constrains agency, and thus we ought not to impede the formation of true beliefs unless doing so prevents a greater constraint on someone's agency or an otherwise impermissible end. I'm gonna be honest here. This is just I don't really know what the main idea is here. It's about lying and when lying is good, right? And I kind of know that because like what grounds opposition to lying in the first place is kind of a fancy way of asking like why can't we lie? So it's kind of trying to explain maybe lying. It's a very dumb summary. I obviously know there's going to be more to it than that, but let's not read it again. I don't think that that's going to help me. Let's see if the choices tell me anything. So one potential means of justifying opposition to lying is this person's argument that we have an obligation to respect other people's agency that entails a commitment to truthfulness except in certain circumstances. Well, it certainly mentions a lot of words I remember. The agency thing, I feel like was in there. Right? Agential interests, right? So that's a great example of you got to know enough English that you can see the word agency and the word agential. I've never seen the word agential in my life, but I know that it has something to do with agency. You got to be able to connect those dots. So if that's too much for you, yeah, I think this is not a great question for you, but I'm good enough there. That doesn't mean it's right, because a lot of times the SAT does this, where they just kind of copy and paste a word, knowing we're going to see the word in both places and feel like, oh, that's a connection. But so far, so good. It seems like it's an explanation, right? Because we're explain lying, right? Justifying opposition to lying. I don't know. Let's leave it. Let's see what else we get. B, many people have an intuitive sense that lying is permissible in some circumstances. Okay, I feel like that's true. I feel like I remember reading that. But lack a principled way to identify those circumstances. And this person's argument may provide a means of resolving that problem. I kind of like that too. Let's just leave that as well. C, this person's argument suggests that if we have a duty to respect other people's agential interests, and if possession of false beliefs constrains agency, then we have an inviolable duty to speak truthfully. Whoa, I thought he was saying that there's reasons that we can lie. Wait a minute. Let me go back. Right? What grounds opposition to lying in the first place? So this person has advanced one answer. The possession of false beliefs constrains agency, and thus we ought not to impede the formation of true beliefs unless doing so prevents a greater constraint on someone's agency. So an inviolable duty to speak truthfully. No, inviolable means it cannot be violated, right? So meaning it can't be broken. It can't be, there's no exceptions, right? So if he's saying there's an unless, then he's giving an exception, or she, I don't know. So no, this is just wrong, right? That really is me understanding the word unless, and I guess the word inviolable, meaning that's a very strong word and you can't violate it. So you do need to know some words here. D, this person's argument shows that if our intuition that circumstances may make lying permissible is correct, then it is unclear whether there are any grounds for an opposition to lying in the first place. No. It is clear, right? He or she is giving some sort of specific case and saying, here's an explanation for why lying might be good or bad. So no, it is clear. So that's wrong. So hey, not so bad. A hard question. I feel pretty good about getting rid of two answers there for a pretty clear reason. So, take a win when you can get one. Now, honestly, we would start to think, how much more time do I want to put into this before I just guess randomly? I'd probably take another pass at it. So choice A again, one potential means of justifying opposition to lying is this person's argument that we have an obligation to respect other people's agency that entails a commitment to truthfulness, except in certain circumstances. Almost like working backwards. Yeah, this except in certain circumstances looks good because it says unless, there's something else going on. We have an obligation to respect other people's agency, right? So we have a duty to respect other people's agential interests. It's just a fancier way of saying that. So I kind of like that part. One potential means of justifying opposition to lying. This is a great example of the SAT doing like backwards double negative stuff. So justifying opposition to lying. So we're trying to say why lying is bad, why we're opposed to lying, right? So the question that's in the middle here, what grounds opposition to lying in the first place? So what grounds means justifies. So what justifies opposition to lying? And then Japa gives an answer to that. So one potential means of justifying opposition to lying is this person's argument. I like that. So, okay, I can't find a problem with A. I check a lot of things and they check out, so that seems good. If we could prove B wrong, that'd be ideal. Many people have an intuitive sense that lying is permissible in some circumstances. Is that true? So the beginning says, philosophers note that many people have an intuitive sense that while we ought not to lie, there may be circumstances in which lying is permissible. Yeah, okay, so that seems good. But they lack a principled way to identify those circumstances. So there's no rule. If this intuition is correct, and we lack an inviolable duty to speak truthfully, what grounds opposition to lying in the first place? Ooh. So I don't see that piece. They lack a principled way to identify those circumstances. There may be circumstances where lying is permissible. If this intuition is correct and we lack an inviolable duty to speak truthfully, meaning there are cases where we can lie, what grounds opposition? Why are we opposed to lying? So I'm getting really picky about the words here, but I'm pretty sure I found something that's wrong with B. It doesn't really say that we lack a way to identify the specific circumstances when lying is allowed. It's more here that they're just saying, well, why people feel that lying is wrong. Why do they feel that, right? I mean, we also know that there are cases when lying is good. So what gives? Why do we feel bad when we lie? Why do we sense that that's a bad thing to do? If we know that there are exceptions, then why do we intuitively sense that lying is bad? And that's the thing that they're questioning is what justifies this idea that lying is bad in most cases. That's the thing they're really trying to examine. They're not trying to find the specific circumstances or a specific rule for that. And then if we continue, this person's argument may provide a means of resolving that problem. No. This person is trying to give us an explanation for why lying is intuitively wrong, right? Why we have that feeling. It's not about finding the specific circumstances where we can justify lying. We can say lying is good. So this is changing the argument. It's really sneaky. I think, I was a philosophy major in college, so this speaks to me in certain ways, but I still find it very difficult. But I understand for this particular passage, and I think really just for any SAT passage, that words matter. The words we choose are really important. And so here, their choice B is shifting the argument. This is not what this argument is about. The argument is why do people feel that lying is bad? That's what we're really talking about. And notice A, right? Justifying opposition to lying. Why do we oppose lying, right? Why do we justify that, right? We have an obligation to respect other people's agency. There are exceptions to that, but at no point in this passage do they start to say these are the cases where lying is good. They maybe do that kind of at the end a little bit, right? When, lying prevents a greater constraint on someone's agency. I don't know specifically, like they don't give an example, so I don't love that, but maybe that's kind of a rule. But notice that comes up at the end as a very quick thing. It's not the main point. B would be making that the main point. So A is definitely the answer, but I don't know. I'm not confident that I would have figured that out in the moment. Those are very, very close answer choices. And with that clock ticking, they would have looked even more similar to me. So I don't know. At a certain point, remember, you can kind of eliminate some answers pretty confidently, mark for something for review, but don't leave it blank. Pick something. Pick one of the two that you just kind of intuitively feel like is right. And then hopefully you can have time and come back, but you're trying to place a smart bet. Here, I think both choices at a first read neither of them seems particularly strong and kind of obviously wrong. So my feeling would kind of be a true 50-50. But if I do examine it, I'm doing that thing where I try to wedge them apart. They seem similar, but what makes them different? And just going piece by piece, I kind of start to see where they diverge. And hopefully you would too. But this is definitely a very, very hard question. Most people can get this wrong. Don't worry about it. This is not necessary to get a 750 plus. You can still get this wrong, and you won't get an 800 probably, but you can still do very, very well. So this is not a high priority question for even people who are trying to prioritize every question.